When it comes to prepping the body for a training session, the Landmine is one of my favorite tools for getting the body rotating, doing some fast twitch training. So in this video, I'm gonna show you guys some of my top Landmine primers. My name is Coach Joe Drake, and I'm one of the co-authors of the only book out there on Landmine training. So the things I'm gonna take you through, not only are they in the book, but they are the top exercises that I myself use. The top ways that I like to try to get my body prepared for whatever strength work that's gonna come. And when I think about a really good warm-up, a component of that, at least definitely for myself and for as many of my clients as possible, is a little bit of fast twitch work, like something that's gonna spike the nervous system up, a little bit of power training, and also anytime we can add in some rotation, some stability, that's usually a good equation, because those are things that a lot of people need more work on. And just anecdotally, I can tell you guys, the moves that I'm gonna take you through, low reps, high quality, I feel way stronger by the time I get into my training session. So let's jump in. I'm gonna take you guys through a couple of them. So one of the first ones that, not only probably one of the first power moves I started doing with the Landmine, but also the ones that I introduce early on to my clients, is gonna be this staggered RDL, right? It's an RDL to rotational press. And I'm gonna show you how, even with lighter weight, not done super fast, this is a really great priming and warm-up move. Because the cool thing about the Landmine is it really forces us, almost every exercise forces us to integrate foot to shoulders, right? It really forces us to integrate the entire body working together, which if we want to turn that into a, let's call it a scientific training term, stability, right? It's firing up stability in the body. And this one's great because we're getting hips, we're getting rotation. So let me show it to you first, and then we'll break it down. All right, so again, you can start this move light, staggered RDL, right? Kind of our traditional staggered RDL position. So a great one for us to get a little bit of waking up and turning on the posterior chain, the glutes. But the cool part about this is we're also now gonna have to transfer force through our foot, up through the bar, all right? And then even when I get here, I've gotta control this long lever up top. So I'm really getting everything. It's not a huge pressing exercise. The goal is for me not to make this like a heavy upper body movement, but just everything fluid moving together. Okay, so when you talk about functional core training, or really just learning to transfer forces through the hips and into the upper body, this is a really great move. And you can start light. Oftentimes if I'm starting this with a client, this would be something where I'm not worried about the load, I'm just worried about them getting moving. And you guys can see, I got a 25-pound plate on here. I'm huffing and puffing already. I'm using a lot of muscle mass at one time, okay? So even just from a warm-up move, that's great. And as I was doing it right there wasn't a lot of speed and power, but this is one where over time, if you think about all the things that we're integrating into this, we've got some good hinging, right? More single leg. I then have to transfer force through my core. That's great. I've got to learn to rotate my hips, and I've got to stabilize that bar when it comes up top. So we're getting a lot of really, really good skill sets inside of here. And once I get comfortable with it, especially if I'm thinking, hey, how can I get my body really primed up for some of this strength work that I'm going to do? Maybe it's going to be some lower body strength, whatever it is I have coming in my workout. Once I get comfortable, now I can really start to integrate in the whole body, firing together. And oftentimes if I'm doing that, I'm gonna be uneven on one side now for the video, I'm doing maybe like 3 to 5 reps. We're not talking high reps here. You could, if you're starting with lighter weight and you're just getting the good form down, maybe you're going through 8 to 10 of our non-power version, which is really gonna be a great one for getting the hips opened up and moving. And then if I go into a real primer, 3 to 6 reps per side, resting in between, maybe 2 sets, and then we're firing into our workout. All right, so that's our RDL to rotational press. Definitely standard favorite. I've been doing that one for over a decade now, and I still throw it into my programs. And it is probably the #1 that I introduce first out of all these moves when it comes to a client, because I just find it's easier to break these pieces down before, boom, having to put it all together. The next one I'm gonna show you actually starts from the same position. This one is what we call clean and press. So it has some things that are similar. This little hinge, which I like, but it also forces us to control and rotate from those hips, and then I'm pressing from this different stance, okay? And I find that's good over time. as you guys get into more landmine training, you'll find a lot of the exercises, like our pressing, we might do it with one leg back, but the body was meant to push and pull in all kinds of different directions. And so this is a nice one just to kind of put it all together. So let me show you guys here in real time. This one I'm gonna call clean, and the clean really comes from that little hinge, catch, all right? And you can see, really I've just caught it up here, body's facing the anchor point now, and then press. All right, and you can see, oh man, Joe's rotating a little bit here too. Here's a little bit of that rotation. And this is really, I like this too, because this is like T-spine, thoracic spine rotation that's happening here. And then bring it back down. And then coming up, and then back down. Coming up, and back down. And again, warming up a lot of things at one time, right? Again, we're integrating hips, we're having to transfer forces through our hips, but now we're also having to get into this press on the opposite side with a little bit of rotation. So this is one, like I mentioned for the first one, you might teach slower controlled in pieces and lighter, but then over time you can get some relatively heavy loads, pressing up, and back in, all right? So from here, these both came from kind of the staggered RDL stance. I love both of those. Next one up, this one's gonna be more for like an upper body day. Just getting something that's kind of twitchy. Let's say you have an upper body pressing day. This one I call the drop step, okay? So it's just gonna be a little variation, right? We've got a little foot movement. So obviously we have traditional single arm presses. This one, step one, I'm gonna load the hips. I'm gonna load this foot, and you can see I'm on the ball of the foot, right? I'm trying to get my body used to pushing off ball of the foot. That's where we generate more power. So on this one, we're gonna drop into it, but you can see I'm not flat on this heel on that leg. As I drop down, I turn the hips, and I'm kind of ready. My core, my spine, sometimes you can even have the elbow up. I'm already ready to unload and then reset. Little step, I'm gonna go slow again, dropping into it. That's piece one, piece two. But then in real time, it's like I'm almost getting a little agility work. I'm here, trying to load off that foot and explode. So this one, you're getting a little bit of lower body and hips, and then a lot of upper body power. Definitely one you gotta go a little bit lighter on if you wanna be able to control it relative to your strength levels. But definitely one, if I'm doing like an upper body pressing day, let's say I'm doing some heavier dumbbell pressing in my workout, this is one that I love doing for a primer. Gets the shoulders moving, also gets my core rotating a little bit, just so I get some of that inside my workout. Next up, I'm gonna show you guys here too. All right, this one, a little bit more coordination that goes into it, just because as we got ourselves in our clean and press here earlier, we were already kind of in this start position, which is the ability to kind of use our T-spine and core, right? Some people in the landmine world would call this coiling. I'm not gonna get into any of that, but I do like these couple moves. This one is gonna be what I would just call rotational press, okay? So like the one we just did with our drop step, it's gonna be a little bit more upper body dominant, but you'll find on this one, plenty of core happening here too. I'm gonna have same leg forward, pointed towards the landmine. This elbow, you can see it's like sitting on my rib cage here. I'm gonna go elbow up on this side. That's gonna put me a little pre-stretch over here. And then same time, I'm gonna explode up with this landmine, but you'll see feet are also gonna switch. Ball the foot. Okay, so I'm ending off in this single arm press position. But a lot of my power really is coming from those hips. Hips up through my upper body, which is great. Again, if we're thinking about power, we're thinking about priming the body for our training session. 3 to 5 of these on the ball of my foot. Core's engaged. Explode up. Rest in between sides. Okay, so that one is definitely, these last two, we're getting a fair amount of upper body movement happening, so you might feel some of the shoulders working. So if you're thinking about when I might throw that one in, this one I find could be on a full body day. It could be lower body, it could be upper body, because you're really having to use everything together, all right? Boom, rotate, almost like if you were doing like a jerk, for those who might be familiar with more traditional Olympic lifts. But the cool part about the landmine, all the moves we've done so far, it generally doesn't require a lot of weight. All right, I want to be able to move something relatively quick, and unlike traditional Olympic lifts, it's not nearly as technical. You know, catching a barbell overhead with both hands, learning to catch in a rack position, those take a ton of time and a lot of mobility that people just don't have. This, much easier, works around a lot of those things, so I find you can get into it a little bit faster. And I like that it's got this rotational element, because that's what we're missing a lot inside of some of our training. That's what you're doing out when you're playing pickleball. If you play pickleball, I don't know, it's hot down here. People love it. People love it. All right, so last one. This one is probably gonna be, I would say, the most technical from just the position that you're gonna actually at some stage let go of the bar. Okay, so this one's gonna be what I call a rotational snatch. Looks cool, right? It looks cool, but this one also I find is a great one, especially if you wanna start to integrate in some more lower body here as well. So you can see on this, I'll show you a quick setup here. Weight's more ball of your foot, a little bit more athletic. I'm gonna go across. So you can see I'm loaded up, and again, in the landmine world, some people might call this coiling, but for me, I'm gonna say I'm loaded. I'm loaded down into my lower body. I'm in a position here, elbows tight to my ribs, and I'm gonna grab inside the bar. So even if you can feel, if you take the weight and you come up and down here, you're gonna be like, yeah, I definitely feel quads and glutes working here. But the real goal is gonna be for me to explode up with my legs, initiate from the legs, catch with the upper body. And you can see I explode up and I drop down into it. And so this would be like a landmine version of a snatch, right? Where we're going from ground to overhead. The only difference, we're changing arms, okay? So I say proceed with caution with this one, on your own or with clients. This is not the most common one I find myself doing with clients, just because the transition can take time and be a little bit tricky. Let's show you on the opposite side here. Load it up, ball of the feet, reach down here in between. So I got a little bit of rotation happening here in the body. And then as I come up, I'm gonna be exploding the opposite way, all right? So here, and you can see I bring the other elbow right to the rib cage. And just that, throwing that hand, I get some good power. I'm using some of my rotational muscles. And you know, a fun way for me to try to add in a little bit of power training before I get into my workout. So hopefully this gives you guys some ideas on like, okay, I see how I could use the landmine. Now, without a doubt, these by themselves could be power training. When you get good at some of these movements, especially let's say like the snatch, you can load it pretty heavy. This could be a primary power move, but personally, I like using it moderate to lighter weights just to get a little bit of twitchy, fast twitch work in before I get into my strength training and then move on.